Howdy guys, Jimmy Song here. Welcome to another episode of Bitcoin Tech Talk, issue number 135. I can't believe I've been doing this for this long, but this is the show where we go through the newsletter that I put out every Monday morning. And we go through some of the things that have happened in the last week from sort of a technical perspective. And we go through, what those things mean and, what articles that you guys might want to read and so on. So I'm not sure if I'll have this next week because I'll be in New York and everything, but I do want to make sure I knock this one out and make sure that you guys have a good grasp of what's been going on. It's unfortunate that the Taproot proposal came out this morning because I really want to comment on that, but I'll save that for the next time I do this show, which possibly might be next Monday. Not really sure. I mean, it's the middle of consensus and everything, so it's going to be a little bit tough, but we'll figure this out going forward. Anyway, let's go to the actual screen share and application window. There we go. As always, you can subscribe to the newsletter in the show notes. It comes out every Monday morning, and it's a really good way to keep up with everything and see what's going on, from a technical perspective. All right, so let's take a look at issue number 135. One of the things. Oh, before I do that, let me show my book a little bit. This is my book on Amazon, Programming Bitcoin, Learn How to Program Bitcoin from Scratch, first edition. It is still $40.59. I have no idea how Amazon does its pricing, but I do know that it's I think cheaper now than Mastering Ethereum. Let me just check. Yeah. Oh no, Mastering Ethereum is now $38.70. Dang it. Yeah. I mean, it's getting cheaper, so that's a good thing. And I now have 19 reviews, most of them 5-star. A couple of the 1-stars are formatting, and the third one that's a 1-star is like it's like a BSV show or something like that. I would appreciate any reports. Report this as abuse kind of thing for the BSV guy. Formatting, that's just kind of a mistake that me and my publisher made. So, we'll own up to that one. But the other ones, that's just like such a shilling thing to do. All right, so that's number one. The other thing is we do have Programming Blockchain New York that's happening, and that is coming up next week. I can't believe I'm saying that, but yeah, it's in something like 10 days, and it's going to be a 2-day seminar. You can learn all about Bitcoin, and at least the blockchain layer of Bitcoin, in about 2 days. It's a very intense seminar. If you're interested, please apply immediately because it's kind of getting late, and planning for it and stuff like that tends to be very tough towards the end if you do it that late. All right, so let's take a look at some of the stories. The first one is that 0.18 is released, and this is from the Bitcoin core dev list, and Vladimir Vandelon, who is the core maintainer who puts out these things, talks about what's new in 0.18 and so on. There's more documentation. I think they changed the RPC stuff a little bit. Basically, you can make it so that you can be queried for whatever via RPC on your node. But the core devs felt like that was a little bit insecure because you could get DDoSed on your node, and just because you have your RPC port open, that wouldn't be necessarily a great thing. So they make it like they don't want you to sort of misconfigure and accidentally turn this on and make it available to the entire world. So they make it a little bit more difficult to sort of just be a complete listening. To have the RPC thing on for every IP and so on. All right. There's a bunch of other new RPC codes. Get node addresses returns peer addresses known to this node. And this is a network command that's been around for a while, but it's now like an RPC command as well, which could be very useful. Get RPC info, derive addresses, and this is returns one or more addresses corresponding to an output descriptor. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, so there's a whole descriptor thing. So you can label certain addresses something and then go and look for those and so on as part of the new wallet, as part of the core wallet. Updated RPCs, get peer info, set TXP, get address info, import multi. Ooh, that's interesting. Has been updated to support pay-to-witness script hash, pay-to-witness pub key hash, pay-to-script hash. Wow. Okay. Okay, yeah. So you can import a multi-sig address and sort of watch it using your core wallet. You might not have the keys or whatever, but that's a really cool and interesting thing. Returns an additional warning field for each request with an array of strings explaining when fields are being ignored or are inconsistent if there are any. Okay, it's good to know. Import priv key will preserve previously set labels. Okay, all right. So the whole labeling thing has more functionality, it sounds like. Yeah, deprecated and removed RPC sign raw transaction. Wow, okay. Okay, so that's no longer available. So you have to create the transaction sort of in the way that you can't just sign random stuff, which I think is a good thing. Add witness address is removed. Okay. Generate is deprecated and will be fully removed in a subsequent major version. This RPC is only used for testing, but its implementation reached across multiple subsystems, so it is being deprecated. Okay, that's a good idea. And I think that's largely used when you're using reg test, and you just call generate, but it's across a couple of different things. So that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different changes. I encourage you guys to upgrade if you are so inclined. And I read through it. You get to learn a lot about how the Bitcoin system works just reading like a lot of these release notes and so on. All right, here is an explanation, a technical introduction to Bitcoin for non-technical people, and this is I read through some of this, not all of it. It's actually quite a long article, but it's actually a very good explanation of what Bitcoin is. Alex Danko has done a very good job of talking about a lot of that, and it's not that popular, or at least doesn't have that many comments or likes or whatever. I think this sort of thing needs to get more attention. It's like being able to describe Bitcoin to non-technical people is going to be a major thing that we're going to need to be able to do as Bitcoin becomes more and more popular. So another good article, I would read through it or send it to people that are interested but aren't technical and so on. Bitcoin's gravity, really interesting article from Gigi. I don't really know who Gigi is. It's a 17-minute read, so it's again a very long read, but it's a very interesting way to look about it. There's this concept of Bitcoin having some sort of like a gravity, like people are sort of drawn to it, and as a result, it creates like even more gravity and so on. Yeah, I mean, idea, value, feedback loop. Lots of really cool concepts. Here's the main thing: Bitcoin's gravity well. Like about how it attracts a bunch of people into this ecosystem. Anyway, it's a fascinating article. I would encourage you guys to read the whole thing. All right, and this final one, I hadn't heard of this before until this week, until when someone pointed it out to me. But and you guys know I don't usually do anything related to price on this show, but this was so intriguing because of the big thing that's revealed as a part of this pricing model, and that's that it has a 95% correlation with price. This metric, and the metric is pretty simple. It comes from Dean's book, Bitcoin Standard. Really, it's just a straight mapping of stock to flow ratio versus current price, right? And if you're not familiar with what stock to flow ratio is, stock is the current amount of stuff of whatever commodity, and flow is new stock is commodity that is available on the market, and flow is how much new amount of that is coming into the economy every for a given time period, usually like a year or something like that. So we know, for example, that gold has a very high stock to flow ratio. There's a lot of gold, and new gold entering in doesn't usually exceed like 1 or 2% in any given year. Something like aluminum, or palladium or something like that, most of that stuff, there's new flow coming in constantly, right? Like, if it's sort of in a building or something, that's not really considered part of the stock. But new flow coming in tends to be very high respective to the stock. This is why we don't use like rhodium for as money, because there's only a tiny amount of stock and a tiny amount of flow, and the ratio between the two tends to be rather low. Whereas with gold, stock to flow is very high. So the thing that's really kind of crazy is that this is, I think, 100 trillion USD on Medium. I think the guy's Twitter name is Plan B on Twitter. The real crazy thing is that the stock to flow ratio versus price, the price of Bitcoin, or the market value, or I guess it's a market cap of Bitcoin, trends in such a way as to be really, really close to this regression line, right? And what's even crazier is that there's this silver right here, right? Like, and there's gold. It's all along this line and in very close proximity, which tells you that like there's something to this, right? Like this might be the valuation model that might, that everyone's been searching for a long time, which is, you look at stock to flow, and you look at you look at the commodity, and you can map like how much it should be based on that, and that's really, really powerful. And you can see the number of blocks per month and all this stuff, and like how price change based on the stock to flow model, and you can see that it is really, really close. And in fact, there's a few things that are really interesting about it. Right here is so this is the $30 bubble in 2011. Right here, it went up to $30 and came back down, and you can see that it was following the stock to flow model really, really well. We overheated and came back and actually overshot the stock flow model. But we stayed pretty close, and then we lagged behind a little bit right after the halving in 2013, and that's actually, according to this model, what caused that first bubble in 2013 wasn't actually a bubble per se. It was just catching up to the stock flow. And the second bubble in 2013 was actually a bubble, because you can see that it went way above the model line, and that caused it to overcorrect a little bit because we came below this line. And then we had the halving in 2016, and basically the price didn't catch up until sometime in 2017. And then we overshot it, and then we've come back, and we're still kind of below this line, which in of itself is really, really interesting, because we are headed towards this halving. Are we going to get ahead of that, or are we going to get behind that? I mean, it's crazy, but the correlation on this graph is really, really high. And you don't need that many data points because we know what the stock and flow are going to be because it's all written in the software. The fact that this pricing model comes just so close is absolutely incredible, and that's something to really think about. So anyway, I would encourage you to follow this guy, Plan B, on Twitter and read through some of these ideas. Again, I don't usually do price on this show, but this one was really compelling. And when you have like a 95% confidence interval, that's that will get my attention, especially on something like price. All right, so let's take a look at some lightning stories. There's no blog post or anything, but you can see this little bubble here. We're live. Blockstream Satellite API Beta is live and utilizing Lightning Mainnet for payment. So now you can use blockchain satellite API and Lightning. So that's good news. There's more industry adoption. PUTParmigan. This is a Lightning Network wallet, as far as I can tell, and it was developed by this company Nayuta out of Japan. And this is the first of two stories about them. But yeah, I mean, it's completely in line with the Bolt specification, which is the specification behind the Lightning Network, and the fact that we have more choices, like you can go and download PUTParmigan and do stuff like list payment, send payment, remove payment, all that stuff. Really good stuff. I love that there's more of these wallets coming, and this one's out of like the Western Hemisphere, I guess. This is a demo, Nayuta Lightning Shield, and this is using Raspberry Pi Zero. And if you're not familiar with Raspberry Pi Zero, that is a $5 board. And it's like even cheaper than the Raspberry Pi, which costs like $35. So they have essentially a like a demo where they use PUTParmigan on this little board, which is kind of incredible that you can do something like that. Hodel announces Lightning support, so they are. I guess we should go to hodelhodel.com. But basically what you can do now is you can pay for various things and buy and sell using Lightning. And obviously they're a P2P exchange. The fact that you could do it via Lightning is that much more convenient. All right, so good stuff. Couple of other stories. We got ring signatures part 1. This is, if you're not familiar with ring signatures, they're used, I think, largely in Monero and possibly in Grin as well. But basically, you can sign with a particular private key and have it known that you are one of many private keys, but the verifier has no idea which one. And that's, it goes through interactive and non-interactive versions. This is a really good article explaining how they work, and it's only part 1. And I think the idea is to introduce Schnorr eventually and talk about sort of the motivations behind, why we would want Schnorr, for example. Last story, Blockchain Capital, that's obviously my firm, or a firm that I work for at least quarter time. This is something that my colleague Spencer put out. This is the demographic megatrend data analysis. This is was commissioned by Blockchain Capital, but Harris Polling did the actual poll. But you can see that it's kind of crazy, but most people have gone up in hearing about Bitcoin. A lot more people are familiar with Bitcoin. The perception is that it's a really, it's become more positive over time. yeah, Bitcoin is a positive innovation in financial technology. I mean, a 2% difference is probably within like standard error or whatever, but like it's up for everybody else. A lot more conviction. Well, a little more conviction. I think most of these are within error bars or whatever. Propensity to purchase. More people willing to purchase, and I mean, 21% of people prefer Bitcoin to government bonds. 17% of people prefer Bitcoin to stock. 14% of people prefer Bitcoin to real estate. 12% prefer Bitcoin to gold. So kind of crazy. Like it's, Bitcoin is actually making inroads, and this is proof that this is proof, right? Like we're seeing it in these polls and so on. So really good stuff. I think we've gone through a lot of different stories. Let's open it up to Q&A at this point. Let's see if there's anything here. Bitcoin check. Do we know when Schnorr Taproot might happen, like an actual date ETA? Unfortunately, that's not how like the whole bit process works. Like a lot of other coins will just be like, okay, well, this is our roadmap. Here's what we're going to do, and here's what we're supposed to deliver by this date, and this date. And for centralized coins, that makes perfect sense because you can you have a set number of people, and there's like sort of a social contract that you would get those things done and so on. In a decentralized platform like Bitcoin, I mean, you can't do that, right? Like you can say all you want, we want to get this thing out by July of 2020 or something like that. But that's not how it works. You need consensus for the large part. I mean, if it's a soft fork, you don't need consensus per se, but you want to. It's in your interest as somebody that's promoting that to get as many people on board as possible. So it's you can't put a date on it, and if you're watching like Peter Woolley and Francis Puleo argue on Twitter a little bit, like Francis would love to get a date, right? But Peter's like, no, you can't have a date, right? Like that's not how a decentralized system works, right? Like you can't have a date. Like we can give estimates, but they're kind of meaningless, and that's he's being kind of a good engineer in that regard. You should try your best not to give estimates because like that sets up expectations. It's not really, you can't really win as an engineer really if you have that. So there's no real ETA on it. I imagine once the bit becomes codified, then we'll start talking about whether or not it's something we should do as a community, and then at that point, we can start talking about it as like code review and all that stuff. All right, baby steps. Could be years for Schnorr and Taproot. Yeah, I mean it might take a while. All right. Is MakerDAO a good ecosystem to share with Bitcoin? No. Are any current thoughts on the news today that Fidelity says they will start BTC trading in the next few weeks? Obviously positive, right? I mean, I'm always like skeptical about like, greater access causing like a giant buy spike or something like that. I know that's like the expectation of a lot of traders and so on, which is why when like an altcoin goes on an exchange, it tends to pop in price or whatever. But with Bitcoin, it's a little different because you might have more access, but people that want Bitcoin, I mean, I think most of them have some, right? Like there's been a lot of avenues to buy it if you wanted to. I mean, maybe if you're sort of like meh about it, and you happen to be in a good mood a particular day, maybe you go and get some. I don't know. It's positive in the sense that adds liquidity to Bitcoin, and that's always a good thing. But I mean, as far as getting more people involved and causing a price spike or whatever, I mean, like the stock flow ratio thing was pretty convincing for me. and like demand, like the supply side is absolutely kind of written in stone at this point. The demand side tends to be very conscious of exactly how much stock there is, and that the price seems to be reflecting that. So yeah, I think that that's probably more the driver of price than, you know, like more venues or whatever. So yeah, there we go. What do you think will happen to Tether and Bitfinex? I really have no idea. I mean, Tether is yeah, I mean it's been sketchy for a long time, and I hear they're moving from like Omni to Tron or something like that, and like it's a centralized thing, guys. It's like 74% back, which granted it's better, like it's got more backing than the US dollar or whatever. But I mean, I've always been weirded out by the coin itself. I always sort of like the only real reason to use it is because you know, an exchange doesn't have access to like actual USD. So let's use this other coin to be able to do it, and that's kind of what all the stable coins are. It's to be able to access less regulated environments digitally with that coin. So I don't know. It's centrally controlled. It's always like kind of seizable, and it has that vulnerability. So it doesn't. I mean, maybe it's like a slightly more convenient bank or something like that. So I don't know. As far as Bitfinex, I mean, there's I haven't really traded on there in years, and a lot of people have like there's, I think, still a Bitfinex premium at this point. It's you know, obviously people are scared about the Tether thing. I don't know. It's like I'm always kind of skeptical of exchanges in the first place. Not only because, you know, they have your keys, so that means that you don't really own your Bitcoin. You basically loaned it to them, and you can ask them to pay it back as like a demand deposit or something like that. But yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. I'm waiting for better exchanges to come along, and that's what I'm hoping for. All right, so you know, I think that's about it for today. I mean, what time is it anyway? 3:30ish. Yeah. So that's it. That's about it for today. I do have an article coming out tomorrow, which I'll talk about, I guess, next week. And I will be going to the Magical Crypto Conference and speaking there, I think, on Sunday afternoon. I am also going to be at Consensus. I believe I'm speaking on Tuesday there. And obviously, I have my seminar on Thursday and Friday, so that'll be fun as well. So yeah, if you're in New York, there's a bunch of stuff that I'll be attending. I'll probably tweet that out and let people know. And you know, if you see me and you have my book, I'm happy to sign it for you in the cryptographically secure way that I've been doing. So yeah, would love to see you guys if you're there. Hope all that helps you. One more question. It says, if cryptocurrencies are a means to be free from the current banking system, what's the point of having stable coins? Yeah, I mean, the point is it's like kind of like a transitional currency or something like that. And that transition, you know, validly may take a really long time. So, you know, there's room for them. At the very least, there's some that are fully backed, or so it seems. So that would have utility. It's certainly better than a promissory note from, you know, like a bankrupt bank, I guess. So anyway, hope that all helps you. Thank you so much. And you know, this song is done.